Ladies and gentlemen, we see DeepSeek, a new large language model that brings an enormous amount of uncertainty into the AI industry just due to the fact that we had Nvidia come down over 17% today in a major pullback because this new Chinese large language model claims that it can offer pretty competitive technology for a fraction of the price. Wall Street didn't like this, and we're seeing a big spin around for a lot of the big AI stocks, bringing down the broader market. NASDAQ comes down over about 3%, S&P 500 down 1.5%. However, Palantir actually shows a little more resiliency, and we're going to be talking about in a little bit why I believe this is so. But before we get too far, let's talk about DeepSeek, what's happening, what we're seeing in the economy, and what could continue to occur. Now, we're growing rather fast. Hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that like button. Of course, not a financial advisor, collecting all the data and dispatching it to you. Now, pop it up on the screen here. Like I mentioned, NASDAQ down, up about 3%, that it actually fell today. Nvidia, you can see the large drop here. I looked at my phone and I was wondering what in the Toledo was happening in the pre-markets that you see down here over 17%, closing at 118. Now, before we get more into the prices, looking at DeepSeek, the things that they're doing here, and the acknowledgments that we've actually seen from some of the top AI innovators in the US. Now, this stock, or not the stock, sorry, the shock from the financial markets here from China, DeepSeek unveiled this large language model saying that it can compete with US giants, but at a potential fraction of the cost. This is what's causing a lot of uncertainty. And the fact that it actually already hit the top of the charts for free apps on Apple's App Store right now is bringing some more encouragement, actually, to this competitive new type of large language model. And one thing, though, is that the US government has restricted a lot of Chinese access to some of these top AI chips. So that's where the fear is and the skepticism is how is DeepSeek going to actually shake up the economy built around this AI industry? And how are they getting or developing possibly these big AI chips that are claiming to compete with some of the top competitors? So it remains to be seen, I think this will come out with over time, if DeepSeek found a way to work around the chip restrictions and what chips they ultimately use. That's going to be a big skepticism going forward. However, what we're seeing, though, is a major actually acknowledgement. One reference here, Sam Altman from OpenAI, saying that DeepSeek's R1 is actually an impressive model, particularly around what they're able to deliver for the price. He continues on here saying that they will obviously deliver much better models, and also it's legit invigorating to have a new competitor. So acknowledging that competitors are good for the industry, I do think this is important to help maintain some of these astronomical chip prices. However, acknowledging that it is an impressive model, I think is a pretty big statement by one of the biggest innovators of AI technology that we've seen in the previous few years. Where Nvidia sits right now is actually, it looks like in the overnight hours here, a decent amount of investors are kind of buying the dip on this, thinking there's an overreaction. We saw Nvidia close at about 117, 118, and pulling up right now in the overnight hours is sitting at 121. And looking at Nvidia right here, this could be a decent entry point or price for people that do think that this is a short-term overreaction. We haven't seen a ton more other than the large language model was released, and you can download it now. So I'm going to be giving you guys some more research, data, information that I'm finding as this story does develop. One big thing that we do see actually showing more resiliency is Palantir. Palantir comes down about 4% today. This is most likely just due to reaction of the DeepSeek news. A lot of the AI stocks continue to have a pullback. But coming down only about 4% today, still maintaining a very high price level, which is good for Palantir, continuing to build support here in the mid-70s and consolidate. Palantir at 75 is an interesting point. And one of the OG kind of followers of Palantir made a really interesting statement that I agree with, and basically says that DeepSeek makes it clear that something that Palantir's management has been trying to say for months, and it's that these AI models are set to become commodities, and that all the value will accrue to the application in the workflow layer. What's the actual output of utilizing these large language models? And that the value is not actually just within the large language model itself, but the intersection between the business logic, the business norms, the laws, and the ethics, how are these going to be incorporated to help all these different clients and businesses across the board? That's the true value in the market. And Palantir, I think, is ahead of the game right now and has acknowledged that for months. And I would agree with that. Really working on AI infrastructure and orchestration via AIP and bringing a lot of use cases and utility to these large language models. I think that is a big reason why Palantir was one of the leaders of the top stocks last year, and I think will continue to grow. Where Palantir sits right now in the overnight after hours is basically at about the same price, 75.52, hanging out here. Like I said, not a bad thing with some of the big reactions that we saw in the market today. And remember that earnings for Palantir comes out next Monday post-market. It's crazy to say that next Monday. We've already been a month into 2025. Starting off February, earnings per share 11 cents, correlated with a revenue of 776 million. Interesting article here too is that Palantir, we're starting to see a lot of institutional investors that are jumping on board. Palantir was originally a very large retail stock. And of course, I think it still is a large retailer stock. But you can see that institutions, according to the ownership breakdown from the NASDAQ here of today, institutions are really starting to pile on Palantir. And I think that is a big reason of why we've seen a large price influx and telling what institutional ownership tells us about Palantir Technologies. And the reason why I think Palantir will continue to be resilient, even though we're seeing ownership from the institutional side and from the retail side across the board, why it'll be resilient is because these new large language models just coming in, that's not going to be a big fear for Palantir. I think the competition for Palantir is different companies that can figure out the proper way to utilize them. So Palantir is that middleman that a lot of companies, I think, are striving to find, and is why I remain bullish on Palantir, regardless of these prices. Of course, cheaper prices would be attractive. If we see a pullback in the general market, we'll see what happens. Looking at some of the stock features today, they're little change after the sell-off. Currently, we're starting to see some of the futures that are continuing to settle down. But you got to remember that this market cap loss of nearly $600 billion, that's a big loss, the biggest one-day drop in the U.S. company's history. Valuation, of course, remains extended. We have corporate earnings that are going to be coming up. Starbucks, Boeing set to report on Tuesday. And we also have a data of the Magnificent Seven companies reporting in the coming days with Meta, Microsoft, Tesla, and Apple. So big earnings that will be released here. And the Federal Reserve is also set to kick off its two-day policy meeting. They are pricing in about a 97% chance that the interest rates will actually remain unchanged, which is good, because I'm on the board with that. I think a lot of people are on the board with that we are not going to see rates change in this policy meeting. And if 97% of that is already being priced into the market with this news, it probably won't be a large reaction unless for some reason they decided to hike rates. Hopefully not, because that's where we're going to continue to see a little bit more of a pullback. Other than that, another big stock that we've been talking about is SOFI here. SOFI actually drops in today, not due to just purely DeepSeek, but comes down about 10% when it was sitting at 1842 here, down about 1608. This is due to the fact that they have a soft quarter one and 2025 earnings guidance following their quarter four beat. Now, they sank about 15% in the Monday pre-market right here after the lender issued the Q1 and the 2025 earnings guidance that fell short of Wall Street's estimates. The lender in the banking app, they introduced the 2025 guidance for GAAP earnings per share of 25 to 27 cents, midpoint of the 26 to the 29 consensus, and adjusted their revenue according to that. There's been a lot of bullishness behind SoFi right now, so I think this is kind of a big stab in the gut. And seeing here that SoFi is pulling back a little bit, will it continue to pull back, or are we going to see investors that get in on this dip? Personally, my own opinion, I think we've seen a large sell-off across the market. We saw the reaction, possibly a little bit of an overreaction. We don't truly know, how good DeepSeek is, how they will continue to innovate over time. This is just the initial release, causing a 17% drop here in Nvidia. I would be surprised if we continue to see more larger drops, maybe just a little bit more of a pullback. But Personally, I think we're going to see an upswing here unless we see some major changes that develop in the next few days. Peace out. Take care. What's your opinion on this? And I'll catch you guys in tomorrow's video.